So today there's three topics. They are linked. All three of these are very much linked together, and obviously they follow on from previous topics in regards to through passing and decision making. These ones are to do a little bit more with your perception, so what you see with your eyes, and then you'll see some examples of why this is so important to you moving forward. And I guess from my point of view, why I'm still able to compete at my age despite not having any more leg speed or physical speed left in me because I'm slow and old. So the first topic is called It's All in the Eyes. And we're looking at a couple of key factors for the first one. But one thing that you'll find, and again, you'll have to go back to your own training sessions and a match that you can watch from the sidelines if you don't believe this one, but almost every player looks at the ball when they're about to strike it. Now, it doesn't mean they're looking at it the moment they're going to hit it, but at some point in their lead up to kick the ball, they will look at it. Same as you. You'll always have a bit of a look at the ball, right? So that's not what you're looking for. What you're looking for is where do they look just before they strike it. And it's only usually a fraction of a second. The better the player, the higher the level, the less they look at the ball. And you can find that when you watch a top-level game, most of the players don't play like this, but they play like that, where they can still see the ball a little bit with their eyes, but they can see the whole game as well. And we spoke about this, about what you see in terms of vision and not just focusing on one little thing. This is the key, though. This is the key right now, is that the last look they take is usually the look they're going to go and pass the ball. Unless you're at the absolute elite level and the players have worked out how to disguise their passes particularly well. And I'll show you some examples of that. Now, this is really good for you goalkeepers as well that are on in terms of penalty kicks. Sometimes as a little trick, what you can do is as they're looking at their run-up, before they do their run-up, they look at the corner that they're going to hit the ball in or the side they're going to hit the ball in. Maybe as they're looking into that corner, you point with your hands just to show them that you've seen that side. And if anything, all it might do is create some doubt in their brain. And as a goalkeeper, you really want to put doubt in an attacker's brain. As an attacker, you want to try and avoid having doubt in your brain because then you're likely to think, what if I miss? Okay? So if you watch their eyes and you see them and you can sort of perceive the way their body's rotating and their hips are rotating and the foot is shaping up, this is, again, something that comes with more experience. You'll often find yourself in the right place at the right time to intercept the ball, and people will just think you read the game really well, and they'll say that. That's a very common piece of language that you hear from coaches. Oh, he or she reads the game really well. They understand the game really well. And a lot of the time when you watch a top player, it's because they see things with their eyes that the rest of us aren't paying attention to. So today's focus is what you see with your eyes. You'll find that smart players, they're not actually psychic. They just know where to look at what moment. So as I said to you before, just before their head goes down to strike the ball, that last look is a pretty good indicator of where you think their intention is going to be. And it's only going to happen in a split second because kicking a ball doesn't take 5 seconds. Once you go for the snap, it's quite quick, depending on your skill level, okay? And this is one major way that you can read a game. And people that can do this on all areas of the field, from a striker looking at where their defender's likely to kick the ball for a through ball or a clearance even, and adjusting their run straight away to have a few meters gap in between them and the defender, that can be the difference between you getting a chance to score a winning goal or you not just turning it into a 50-50 contest that the defender's going to win. And sometimes if you're the defender in that situation, because you've seen these little cues and these little things that the opponent is showing you with their eyes, you can adjust yourself to be in that position beforehand. The trick to this, though, is not going too early. So what I find, and I think if you ask any top players about this question, if you have the opportunity when you ever meet one of these players or you see interviews, what they're thinking is, I know what you're not trying to show me, but I don't want you to know that. It's kind of like a good bluffer, someone that can bluff you and trick you. So you need to be able to disguise things. I'm going to show you the opposite side of it in the next slide, but I want you to understand that a little bit. Now, players that you should research after this, especially, again, I've gone for people that do a lot of screening and defending in games. For the girls, Steph Catley and Danielle Van Donk. So Steph Catley is obviously an Australian player. Danielle's a Dutch player. And if you go into YouTube and you have a look at some videos on these particular players, you'll start to see what I'm talking about in terms of how they read the game. Okay, not only with what they see with their eyes when they're in possession, but what they're looking for in the opponent out of possession. Unfortunately, they're the hardest videos to find, but there are some out there, and I'll let you explore that. For the boys' side of it, the two common ones that I quite like in that role, which usually ends up being that defensive midfielder that has to do this really well, is N'Golo Kante from France and Chelsea. And Marcelo Brozovic is a Croatian one. The reason I've chosen him is he's having a really good season. He was having one prior to COVID-19 at Inter, and he's likely to move to a massive club. Not that Inter's not a big club, but a really massive club when this COVID-19 thing's finished. And he's a really good example of someone that doesn't have the skill set of some of these other quality midfielders. When you look at him, he's not particularly fast. He's not massive physically. He's not super powerful, but his reading of the game and his cleverness is quite good. He was the one, if you remember last week's seminar, that lay down behind the wall when Messi was taking the free kick and blocked it with his back. It was quite clever. Okay, so I'll show you a video after this set of slides. Now, what are your eyes showing? So again, as in everything in soccer, it all works in opposites. So if you know now what to look for when you're playing against somebody, then you have to be able to disguise what you're doing so that you can trick them if they already know what you know, if you understand what I mean. It's like ever watching two great chess players go at each other, and you just sit there in fascination going, wow, you don't know which one knows more about the other player and what their next move is and what they're thinking ahead of time. Okay, so one of the most noticeable factors between a very good player and a great player is the disguise of the pass. And what that means is they make things look like they're doing one thing, but they actually do another. And the better they are at it, the more convincing it is. Okay? What you'll notice with great players as well, if you now go and look at this through YouTube, and I'll give you some players to have a look at, is they actually disguise everything, not just their passing. They disguise where they're running. They disguise where they're pointing for the ball. Sometimes they may even disguise their call. I do a very low-level example in State League where I tell my striker when I'm playing in the back line to come short when I want him to go long. So I drag him in while I'm dribbling with the ball. I'm pulling my hand in for him to come short. I'm yelling, come short, because I know the power of my voice and my actions might trick the defender into coming really tight onto him to try and block the short. And as that defender goes tight, I just dink the ball over the top into space, and it doesn't even have to be a decent pass. Okay, it just needs to be a eye contact or a decision that myself and one of my teammates has made. And you can do this all across the field the more you get to know your teammates. Okay, probably a little bit harder at club level because you're always chopping and changing. Maybe this will be something, I guess, going forward with the KDC Soccer Club that we could really work on in the future, because you'll understand each other so well from training multiple sessions per week. Okay, 5 days a week, constant training. You'll start to notice these things. That's why professionals do things like it's coordinated and in sync. So one thing that these really top players do is they actually disguise where they're going to take their first touch. And that's a really important skill. The video I'm going to show you is of under-9s players in Croatia doing this in their training. Now, it's something we've sort of encouraged you through isolated training, and in the past when you've had sessions with myself or Mr. Kataforis, you might call it checking off or checking on, checking in, whatever you want to call it, okay? But it's something that's a habit, and you can see that it seems to be something that they do quite early in Croatia, just to create, it's almost like a robotic repetition for a player, so you never know exactly where he or she's going, okay? They disguise the direction of their touch, where it's going to go, and obviously in that they're disguising their body to make it look like they might be doing something else, so potentially where they're going to turn with the ball. They'll also, you'll see sometimes a really clever player sets up to header a ball just so that their attacker drops off a little bit and they actually bring it down on their chest or their thigh. Okay, that's all a part of that art of illusion. And I guess from my point of view, when I've ever seen quality players train, I had the really massive privilege of watching Zidane train, the ex-France International World Cup winner, World Player of the Year, now coach of Real Madrid. When they played Australia back in the mid-2000s, they had a training session at South Melbourne's ground in Bob Jane. And I got to watch a training session with the best player in the world at that time. And it looked like he was doing nothing, but he was making people look silly. And he was making top players, like world-class players, look silly just by his fakes and movements and the disguise on his pass. Okay? And this is a really great little quote for you. Great players are deception machines. They're actually full of tricks and lies and fakes. And their lies are to suck the defender in, and this links into what we did last time. But now we're specifically focusing on the eyes and on the disguise of the eyes. And I want you to always appreciate when you play against a top player like that, even somewhere down your age groups, you might play against a player that one day goes and plays for the Matildas or for the Socceroos or even in Europe professionally. You probably already see this in them by now. It's not something that's particularly easy to coach as you get older. You have to be working on it from now onwards. So for you, year 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, you've got a fair bit of time to continue working on this if you choose to really push yourself for that level. For the older players, even if you can be aware of what other people are doing, well, that means you'll read the game. So at least you'll be able to do the defensive side of it really well. And all of a sudden you might jump up a level and play at a high level. Okay? The little tip I'll give you before I show you the video is try and sometimes play passes with the outside of your foot, as you'll see with some of these top players later on in the video, because the outside of the foot is quite disguised. You don't know exactly where it's going. It's not a common pass, okay? And you don't need to change your body shape to get a different kind of curl. When you do an inside curl shot, you do need to open up your hips, and you can't really disguise it that well because the action requires your leg to swipe across your body, if that makes sense, okay? So let's have a look at some examples of top-level players doing it, and I've picked out an Australian in Emily Van Egmond, and I've also picked out an Italian. So I'll play the Van Egmond one a couple of times. So first thing, you can see her first look, and again, I appreciate that the video is not going to be perfect for you, but you can watch it later. Her first look, this is playing in the US Women's League, the strongest league in the world, is across this way, but her pass is going to go somewhere else. And you'll notice at the last second, she does look at the ball, looks at the direction where her pass is going to go. But in that time, she's made all these white players around here start shifting across that way. So just have a quick look at it again. I think I did a slow-mo video. Looks that way, last second looks down, and there it goes. Okay, and it's a nice through ball to her teammate. Now, here it is again in slow motion. I know it's jittery for you guys, but that's okay. You're looking at little key moments. There she looks across to her right, she looks across to her left, looks down at the ball, and then the pass comes in. And Emily Van Egmond is an extremely intelligent footballer. Spent a lot of her time training with boys when she was younger. Here's an example of her simple 1-2, disguise on the pass, and then flicks it with the outside of her foot. And the finish is actually quite brilliant too with the outside of the foot. But just watch it again, and I'll try and start it a few times so you can get a bit of an idea. And then you can watch it later on in the video. So she's seen that. That's her last look. And then the disguise, because it's an outside of the foot, this player hasn't been able to prepare herself to adjust her body because she's still not sure what Van Egmond's doing. She might be thinking, okay, I can still see her. Perhaps she's going to play an overlap pass there and I want to cover that. Don't know. I can't read the mind of the Jamaican player or the Zimbabwe player there. But if you have a look at it again in the last second, just that flick with the outside of the foot, defender split. And to be fair, it's a really good finish as well from the Australian player with her outside of the foot too, which is a coincidence. I didn't even notice that. Now here's one of the male equivalents. Even though he's a centre back, this is Leonardo Bonucci, who's a famous Italian central defender from Juventus and AC Milan now. He's a very good master at the disguise and getting out of trouble. Probably a little bit risky in that last video there against Suarez. He got away with it. And look, there will be times where you will stuff it up, but this one is pure genius. Acts like he's going to play it to his left and then shifts it across to his right. Okay, disguise on everything. And again, when you watch the video in real time or you type him into YouTube, you can find probably some even better footage than this. All right. That's a centre back, remember? Centre backs don't score goals, do they? They do if they're good enough. Because centre-backs, you're always coming from deep and no one knows who's marking you. Midfielders know who their markers are and strikers definitely know, and wingers know who their markers are. Okay? So, quite a good player. Here he is at AC Milan. That's him with the first pass in there. And this is the disguise. So, that's a really good example. They're starting to look this way to get their legs frozen and their body's frozen and looking into him. And then at the last second, he changes his eyesight and slips it between two people. Okay, makes it look so easy. I don't think he's a particularly fast defender. He's definitely not a beast like Van Dijk. That's just clever, knowing the space behind you. Okay, so that's Leonardo Bonucci. Very, very much worth you looking at as a current player that's good at that. All right. Hopefully you enjoyed that one. Players that you should research. I think one of the best at the moment, and I know I'm going to use the FIFA reference. I use it a little bit because I know a lot of you play the game. But Toni Kroos in FIFA has pace somewhere in the 50s. Correct me if I'm wrong. So he doesn't have that natural speed of a lot of the key players that you're used to playing with. However, Toni Kroos has won a World Cup. He's won Champions Leagues. He's one of the best midfielders in the world, the highest paid as well. And he doesn't have physical speed. Okay, he wasn't blessed with speed. Emily Van Egmond is kind of like an Aussie version of Toni Kroos. Okay, she's not quick, but her brain is operating far ahead of most of the girls on the field when she's playing for Australia. Pernille Harder is another player worth looking at, female player. Again, Leonardo Bonucci I spoke about. Luka Modric is one we've mentioned before that's worth looking at because he's smaller and he's a different type of player, but still has a lot of these clever little fake moves. And he's an outside of the foot lover. He actually loves the outside of his foot. Sergio Busquets is the older, slower one, similar to Kroos, but I don't think he's as good in the creative sense as Kroos. He's more of a defensive player. And the Norwegian girl, Ada Hegerberg, who's also really worth looking at on YouTube, and there's some good footage of her as well. So that's something for you to have a look at for those type of players. Now, the last slide, before I go into the mental side of today's session, is the pre-fake. Now, this comes in, again, at a young level in various academies in the world, and it's something that we try to encourage you a little bit in. Probably we should do a little bit more, and I think we will do a little bit more when we come back, especially with the younger age groups, just to nail this in your head that this is so important for your development. So basically, the pre-fake is where you apply the fake before you actually receive the ball. So if you saw the Bonucci example where he let the ball go through his legs a few moments before, that's an example of a pre-fake. Okay, the reason he did it was so that he could get the ball in a more advanced position to face the other way of the ground without having to take a touch. And it sucked in his striker. And no offense to strikers, but usually they're not the smartest defenders in the world. They generally run straight at you. So defenders, we can sometimes get away with it by being clever. Why do we do the pre-fake? The main reason is it actually gives you the two things that you're always looking for in soccer to become a better player, which is more time and more space. You give an average player plenty of time and plenty of space, they can hurt you. They can run at you, they can shoot, they can score if you give them time. You give a striker time in the box that can take 3 touches instead of has to hit it first time, there's a better chance of them scoring. Okay? So that's why we do these things. We do these little things, these little details, just to give us an extra second or 2 seconds, or if we're really good at it, 3 seconds. Once you've got 3 seconds on a soccer field, you can do whatever you want. You can play any pass you want. You can play any 1-2 you want because you've got time to adjust your body and get the technique perfect. It's when someone closes you down and doesn't allow you to perform, that's when we fall down. And unfortunately in Australia, a lot of our players technically fall down because it's not something that's coached enough in them from an early age. Now, this is really good for most of you that are slower players, but it's also good for the faster players that at the moment might be dominating at their club level because of their speed. Now, I was so fortunate on Saturday night to have a live conference with the former director of Dinamo Zagreb and the Croatian whole football curriculum. His name's Dr. Romeo Jozak. He wrote this brilliant book on their whole curriculum and how they develop players. And their record in terms of developing players stands for itself and speaks for itself. But what he spoke about was there are elements in the game that you can't change, and one of them is speed. If you've got speed, great. If you don't have speed, you better have a lot of intelligence, brilliant technique, strength, all the things you can work on, you must have them. Okay? And what he did find as well is if they ever had a young player that was dominating because of their speed, instead of letting that player dominate and they're running onto through balls and scoring goals, which is kind of the opposite of what we do in Australia, instead of letting them dominate, he'd push them up to a next age group where the players were quicker or at least on par with him, and he'd have to struggle to aid his development. Because he goes, one day, when everyone's growth spurts finish and everyone's physique kicks in, speed won't be that much of a difference because you've had a head start. So if you're up here at the moment, everyone's still behind you physically, you're going to start to pick up what he calls bad habits, bad behaviors, things that we can't correct later, and then you won't reach the highest level. And he spoke a lot about players that they had to challenge in their academy to do that because they were big early or they were fast early. And there are players in our program that have natural speed. I haven't coached them. Nobody's coached them. They're just quick. Okay. What we want to do is we want to develop that technical aspect, the understanding of the game, the pre-fake. Okay. The scanning, the reading, the understanding, the perceiving, so that when everyone else catches up, you're not just what we call a one-trick pony or a player that can only beat you with speed. Because once I can beat you with speed, and then I can beat you with a dribble, and then I can beat you with shooting technique, then all of a sudden I've got 3 ways of beating you, you're in big trouble. If I can only beat you with speed, and I'm a smart defender, I'm going to call cover from my fullback if I'm the central defender, or I'm going to call my winger to drop back a little bit, and we're going to deal with you in that game, and we're going to nullify you if we're smart enough. Okay? So, off that rant, that's the reason why slower players are often more technically gifted and deceptive, because guess what? We need to learn it. If we don't learn it, we can't play at any level as a slower player. And I'm speaking about myself, okay? So if I don't learn to be clever with the ball and trick you and buy myself an extra 2 seconds because you're faster than me, you're going to close me down, well, then I'm not going to make it to any decent kind of level. So it's a really, really good point. I really want this to stick in your head with your thought process now when you start training with your clubs and back at school. The players, again, to research. Look, I've got my Croatian bias because obviously of my background and I like to watch these kind of players playing for the national team, so I get to see more of those games in other countries. There are better players in the world than Mateo Kovacic, for example. But he's a really good example of a player that does infinite amounts of fakes, plays at Chelsea at the moment, but has played for Real Madrid and Inter, biggest clubs in the world. Some of the biggest clubs, definitely Real Madrid is, okay? And he's now in the English Premier League, just now starting to find his feet as a top player at 25. But you've got to remember, at 18, he was already a massive transfer into Real Madrid. So sometimes it takes players a little bit of time to catch up. There's a guy, Martin Odegaard, as well, that Real Madrid signed as a 16-year-old. He's only now, in his mid-20s, early 20s, starting to find his feet at Real Sociedad in Spain, which is not a top club, but is a very good club as well. So sometimes people take a little bit more time. But some players that are worth looking at, Amandine Henry, she's a French woman. Jennifer Marizan is a German woman, fantastic midfielder, box to box with a lot of clever plays. From our own players, Aaron Moy is one that I really like to use as an example because Aaron Moy is not quick, but Aaron Moy is playing in the Premier League. Now, whether or not you think him playing in a lower Premier League club is an achievement or not, it's a lot more than many of us will ever achieve in our lives. And he's played at World Cups for Australia, and he's a very technical, clever player. And he had to come back from Scotland as a young player to work his way through the A-League and build his career up again and go overseas. Okay? But he doesn't have speed, like Cruz. Joshua Kimmich is an interesting one from Bayern Munich because he's had to play multiple roles under Guardiola originally, who brought him through his youth team. And Kimmich is interesting because he can play fullback, centre-back, central midfield, defensive central midfield, attacking central midfield. He can play in the wings. But he's typically your all-round type of player that's worth looking at because he's not massive size-wise. He's not particularly quick, but he's extremely clever and intelligent. And the last one there is Lieke Martens, who's a Dutch girl that plays for Barcelona in the women's team. She's like a Messi type player in terms of running at people through little channels and gaps, but he's very good at this pre-fake. I want to show you now how they teach this in Croatia to young kids, and just pay attention to the receiver in this one and then in the next one as well. So you see the little fake and then the touch out. The fake like he's going to kick straight, the touch out to his right. This is their under nines. And the funny story about, actually I'll let you focus on this first and I'll tell you the story. So notice the fake, the wind up, and then the gentle touch. If you can think of a player in our program that's really good at these kind of actions, yell out their name, say it on the microphone, and then people can start to think about them. And as you can tell, they're doing this without pressure. So this is called isolated training. Again, speaking to the coach from Croatia. Their rule is isolated until they get the technique right. Then we can focus on small-sided games. So even in this one, it's a triangle drill. So the first ball is the fake touch out pass, and then the player that's about to receive it also does a fake kick as he's about to receive it. So pay attention to him. It's either a fake kick or a fake movement. So in that one, it was a movement. I'll go back to it so you can see it again. So there's a fake there, and then a little fake kick there just as he receives the ball. You'll see it again from this angle. Watch, just keep your eyes on this guy here. Now, you might think that's difficult to do. The best place to practice this is against the wall. As you kick it to the wall, do a fake kick as it's just about to be received, and then take your touch somewhere and do it again. The throwing in the air, you'll probably need someone to throw you the ball in the air and bring it down, but that's a different kind of challenge. So with the chest, they're supposed to be looking at trying to header the ball, and in the last second, they drop it down for a chest. Okay.
Can this disguise also be shown, like, say, dropping the shoulder? Like, say when the ball's coming on the floor.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say that. And I was waiting for someone to jump in. You'd be the perfect example. You would have been one that I'd use. So Dion Matari, for those that don't know him, is not big. Aren't you, Dion? You're a small guy.
Yeah.
What happens when you get a bigger opponent on you? How do you deal with him?
I have to think faster than him.
Yeah, it's a good point. You can't beat him. You can beat him in short speed because you're quite quick over small distances, but your legs haven't grown enough to beat him over 50 meters. So for Dion to succeed, and he's one that I love watching because he solves his problems in the best way he can with the physical size that he has, and that's his brain. And a lot of it is your little fakes. Yes, you drop your shoulder one way, you go the other way. And if you've watched back some of those videos, guys, that we showed, especially the through passes and things, a lot of the little movements that Dion does are related to these kind of technical elements. So you've developed this stuff somehow organically, maybe through some academy training. I don't know how did you develop it? Where did you come up with the ideas to do this, if you don't mind me asking?
To be honest, I can't fully remember. Like it normally came naturally, but I've gained a lot of experience from like different places. Like I got taught a lot at this AC Milan Academy. Mm-hmm. In Sydney, they taught you a lot about those sort of stuff. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. They would, because again, in Europe, it's a different program because it's so professional. They start developing their players very, very early with this kind of training. So if I showed you, I'm not going to show you today, guys, but I've got their under 6 training. I can add it onto the website, actually. I'll put it onto Teams, and you guys can watch what they do at under 6, under 8, under 10 if you want. And then my little test is go out in the backyard and see how many of the things you guys can do as well, because a lot of it is when I see what their under 10s in this video, what they can do, and I go and watch under 13s or 14s here in Victoria, we're not even close to the under 9s. So what's happening in those next 3 years for us to catch up? So again, it's something we learn it as we go along, but yeah, thank you for chiming in, Dion. You'll notice as well, in these players, I know they're under 9s, they don't pick big players. So they don't, overseas at this club, and this was another thing that came into his conversation, he goes, I don't pick giants that are going to dominate in under 10s. I pick smart players that I know will grow, and then they'll become top-level players, or they'll become at least close to being top-level players because we'll put them in the right environment. He goes, a giant that can't do things technically now and doesn't have the capacity to learn, we won't teach him. They are a bit harsh there, but you've got to remember their main objective, which I thought was brilliant, and they said this to the coaching panel. They said, our number one objective as a club is to produce quality players for our first team and then sell them overseas. That's it. So when we pick players for our academy, we are looking at players with a 5, 6, 7-year plan of where we see them when they're 18, 17, 18, 19. We don't care where they're at 10 to the degree of physicality. We'll develop that later. So it's really interesting philosophy. Not things that I didn't know already, but it was great because I could actually ask this guy questions instead of just reading things from a book. And he was really, really generous with his time. So I thought I'd add this to today's presentation and give you a real literal example. Okay, so is there any questions anyone wants to ask about these elements? No? Okay, so if you go back to the Teams page and you grab yourself your talent profile, I'm going to explain to you what this is, how it works, Then I'm going to explain to you what each category is specifically, and then I'm going to let you fill it in. And then if you want to send it in to me, I'll give you my opinion of you as a player, if you want that. If you don't, that's fine. Or you can send it in to Mr. Cataforis. If you're a year 8 or 9, you can give it to Mr. Cataforis because he's seen you in the past and coached you, whereas the 7s, he hasn't really coached you that much, so you can probably send it to me if you want to. But again, I'm even happy for you to just do it for yourself this time around. We're not just going to do this once. I plan on doing this every 6 months, so you can have a bit of an update and you can keep them all together and say, oh, I've actually grown as a player, or oh, I stopped the soccer program and I stopped club training because I got a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Okay? So my talent profile. Now, this is from a really, really clever, intelligent, highly regarded sports psychologist. His name is Bill Beswick. He's worked with Manchester United, the England national team. He's worked with Willem II in Holland, in the Netherlands, which is a big, well, not a big Dutch team, but a team that's overachieved because a lot of the credit goes to how he's helped the players become mentally stronger. So anyway, this is how he breaks down each player, and he gets them to do this as a profile. We have our software and we have our hardware, just like on a computer. Now, your hardware on this right-hand side are the things that you can't change all that much in short term. So something like your physical. Are you going to be big? Are you going to be tall? Are you going to have long legs? Are you going to have short legs? Are you going to be fast? A lot of that's determined by what your parents gave to you genetically. Okay, so you can either thank them or you can curse them, but you can't really change any of that. You can improve it, obviously. You can become fitter. Okay, you can work on your explosive power, but there are certain limitations to what you can achieve based on your genetics. Okay, but remember, if you look at the whole picture, there's 6 parts to the player, not just one. Okay, so if you're lacking in something physical, it doesn't mean any of those other attributes can't become super strong and you get to a top level. I'd use Kroos as an example. I'd use Modric as an example in this category. Okay, Kroos is physically quite slow. Modric is quick over short distances, but I guarantee he's not going to beat Ronaldo in a sprint. Okay, so you can still manage if you don't have certain things from this right side, the hardware. The next one is your technical skills, and any coach can improve you technically if you put in the work. Now, if you've taken remote learning, for an example, and you've put in a lot of time in your own practice and you've thought about what you're doing and you had little goals and plans, then I'm sure your technical skills have not gone backwards. Hopefully they've improved. Okay, then when you come back to your club training and your school training, you're able to apply what you're learning from this soccer hack stuff, what you're learning from your clubs, what you're learning from your own learning by watching videos and researching things and practicing and training on your own. And then you can start to see some of the things come together. Okay, the last one is tactical. Now, tactical is your understanding of the game, which is where the soccer hacks comes in. So these little tricks are supposed to help you understand the game better. So that, for example, if a coach was to put you in a different position, you'd be fine and you'd be able to deal with it and still put on some sort of a performance that showed that you had an understanding of the game. Not just I'm a left back, and if I'm not in left back position, I have no idea what I'm doing in a soccer pitch. Okay, it's not like when you put someone goalkeeper and they've never played goalkeeper. That's a specialist position, but all the other positions on the field, you're part of a team of 11. You work together, you score together, you concede together, you win together, you lose together. Okay, that's teamwork. Now I want you to look at the left side. The left side is what we've tried to give you a little bit more of on this forum, which is Teams and video, and that's because we can actually sit down and do these kind of presentations. So the first one is your lifestyle, and I'll go into what each one means. But your lifestyle is your sleep, your nutrition. Do you stretch at home? Do you look after yourself? Do you do the right recovery? Do you do all those right things that are going to pay off later on? Lifestyle you can influence heaps. You can make conscious choices on lifestyle as opposed to physical, which you can't really change. You can improve, but you can't change it. You can change your lifestyle. Okay? Emotional. Emotional is how you deal with setbacks, how you deal with the stress of a game. So in a 90-minute game, or for some of you guys, a 70-minute game, when your team goes 1-0 down in the first moment, do you get emotional, irrational, and lose your cool? Or do you keep a calm head and you understand that there's still 68 minutes to go, 69 minutes to go? There's plenty of time. How do you manage your emotions? Do you make a horrendous mistake and you can't function anymore and you need to be subbed at some point because your next touch is then a bad mistake, your next pass is a honker as well? Okay, this is the emotional side of it. The mental side of it is a link of those two, or of emotional as well, but how much do you understand everything mentally? Do you understand what's going on? Can you Can you hold up in a tough situation when there's a crowd booing you, when there's people behind the goals, when there's opposition players that are yapping at you and telling you off? So this is part of your mental and emotional are very linked together. But again, these are the ones, everything in the green, you can improve. That's why it's green, because like a plant, it can grow. See, that's clever. This other stuff, not so much. You can improve it to a degree. And if you can improve it on your own and with a coach and in your environment, yes, but this will take a lot longer. All of this will take a lot longer. This side of thing, even though it's a lifelong thing, it doesn't take that long to see massive changes because you can make the implementation. So I'm going to go through it with you now. I'm going to show you this example. This is a retired footballer. His name's Phil Neville. What we do with this chart is you actually rate yourself out of 10 for each of those categories on where you're at the moment. Okay, not compared to Ronaldo or Messi, but compared to other kids your age in your competition level. So if you're an NPL player, you compare yourself to other NPL players. If you're at Melbourne Victory or Melbourne City or NTC, you compare yourself to the NTC or Victory or City players in your age group. That's what we're doing the comparison for. There's no point in you comparing yourself to Messi and Ronaldo because they're at their own level in a professional environment. Let Hazard compare himself, or Lukaku or Aaron Moy. They can compare themselves to them because they're professionals like them. So let's look at Phil Neville. Now, Phil Neville has 505 Premier League games, retired now, 59 England matches, playing for the English national team, World Cups, Euro Championships. Okay, played most of his career at Manchester United and Everton. Actually, they're his only two professional clubs. And he's now the coach of the women's national team, the English women's national team, which has had a massive resurgence. So he's doing a really good job. Generally played as a fullback, could play on the wing, but was two-footed. And one little interesting story about him, he was actually that good a cricketer that he probably could have played cricket for England as an international had he pursued that instead of soccer, football. But he came through the academy of Man United with David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, these guys. Same generation. Gary Neville's his brother, who's a commentator now and used to play for Man U as well. This is how he rated himself doing this same interview with this guy, Bill Beswick. So he gave himself a 7.5 out of 10 for his physical capacity. He goes on to explain all of this. I can give you the link if you want to watch it one day. He rated himself as an 8 technically, which meant he was competent and he was a two-footed player, so he was competent playing on both sides of fullback or wing or even at centre-back later on in his life when he got a bit slower. Okay, his tactical understanding was good because he had good managers, he believes, and he came up through a good crop of young players that obviously won games together, like youth cups in FA Cup in England, and then also winning it, in the Premier League with Man United. He sort of came in at the right time. Now, he then goes on to his mental, his emotional, and his lifestyle, which are the ones he spent a lot more time working on as he got older as a player, because he realised that once he'd reached his peak for these ones, there wasn't so much more he could do there, but he could improve this. And this is where he hired this guy, Bill Beswick, to work with him. So he rated his mental side as 7. He had a few setbacks. He missed some penalties in major World Cups. He gave away a silly penalty, which knocked England out. Okay, so he's had tough times. His emotional levels, it was actually quite interesting what he said in this one. He said, I don't get too high when I'm winning and I don't get too low when I lose. I generally keep a level head. Okay, but the biggest thing that he changed was his lifestyle. He goes, I lived a professional lifestyle. So if I had to sacrifice family things and functions and drinking and going out with mates, I did it my whole life, because for me it wasn't a sacrifice, it was my choice. That's what I wanted to be, because he knew that he didn't have this part of it sorted when he was younger. This is what he goes to say, quite a reflective guy. So when he rated himself, well, he didn't rate himself, the psychologist did, he rated him a C+ footballer. Now that's just adding all of these numbers up together and then coming up with a percentage score out of, 60, yeah? So he's rated himself as a C+ footballer. Now, A+ footballers, this Bill Beswick guy has been doing his job for 30 years. He reckons he's had 6 in his entire life that he's worked with, or that he's ever seen. Michael Jordan was one of them. David Beckham, he rated as very close to A+, same as Steven Gerrard. Now, what he means by A+ is they have the complete package. They've got their sort of God-given gifts, then they've worked on them and gotten better at them, and then they've got all of these other mental, emotional, and lifestyle decisions that they've made to get themselves to the top and stay there. But C+ was enough for this guy to play 505 Premier League games, go to the World Cup, to the European Cup, play Champions League, win Champions League, win Premier League titles, and now coach a national team, a major national team. C+ was enough. Okay, so something for you to think about. Now, on your document, on your Teams thing, you'll have this. I just did a cut paste showing of it. So what you're going to do is you're going to go through in your own time, but I'm going to talk you through them. If you've got it in front of you now and you want to start typing in, remember to download a copy, not edit the original one that I put up there. But I think this is better that you do later on and you watch this part of the video, this last, whatever, 5 minutes of this video, and just use it again to remind you what each category is for. And then I want you to rate yourself out of 10. If you do this and you want me to give you a rating out of 10 and fill in your details, or Mr. Cataforis, then you Edmodo or you Teams it to me or to Mr. Cataforis, and I'll give you the same time that you put into it. And if you choose not to do it or send it to me, that's completely your choice as well. It's not a requirement. It will be later on. We'll definitely do some of this as part of your theory units in the soccer program for the 7s, 8s, and 9s, and in applied soccer for the year 10s in the future. And I think it's really important that it's an ongoing assessment of your skills, because what you have today, before this seminar, what you knew about eyes and body language and checking things, well, if you didn't know that before today, you automatically have improved slightly on either the tactical or the technical, okay? So you got to remember, you're an ongoing project, just like me as a coach and as a parent and as a person. I'm always looking to get better and smarter and more share more with you guys. So the physical, just to remind you what each category is again. Physical is, are you able to, at your age, in your age group, meet the physical challenge of the game? Can you run out the whole game without having to be subbed and rested? Can you compete from contest to contest? Do you have the speed, stamina, and strength to cope at your current level? Okay, that's very important. Do not compare yourself to Sam Kerr, Aaron Moy, Alessandro Diamanti. Do not compare yourself to these people, because they're senior players. They're in a different, they'll compare themselves to each other. Okay, then you give yourself a score out of 10. And in the details, you try and explain why you think that is, if you want to. If you just want to give yourself a score, then you can give yourself a score. Technical. When you get to the technical column, are you able to produce every skill you require for your position or for your level on demand? That means when a ball comes to you in the air, can you header it competently into a direction that you want it to go? It doesn't have to go 50 meters, because again, you're for your level. Under 12s, 13s, 14s, 15s, 16s, 18s. Some of you that might be playing seniors for the women. Okay, we've got a few senior women's players and we have one senior men's player. Okay, so passing, dribbling, ball control, shooting, crossing. Okay, they're effectively your main technical things that you should be competent in at your level. You give yourself a score out of 10. Tactical. This will come down a little bit maybe more to your coach, but again, you've got me as a coach, you've got Kato as a coach, you've got your club coach, some of you have rep coaches if you get to that level, okay? Do you understand your game plan, your role within the team? Can you handle what the coach is asking you to do every week? Or do you need to ask, not that asking questions is a problem, but do you need constant feedback to be able to function without your coach, okay? At this point in your life. Remember, it's all about being honest so you can develop this. Do you have the discipline to do your job on the field regardless of where your coach plays you? And that's probably the one that'll be the hardest for a lot of you. So if I said to Dion, I want you to play left back, I don't know how he'll go. I'm pretty sure he'll cut into his right foot and join into midfield and then run back because he's pretty fit, which is not a bad thing, but that's how he would interpret left back. If I asked, I don't know who else is online, Amal Femi, I know she was online before. If I asked Emmy to play left back, I definitely know she wouldn't be using her left foot to drive down the line, so she'd be cutting in. So as a coach, maybe tactically I'd be adjusting for my winger to stay wider so that we can dink balls into space for her to run in, because we're not going to have the width from our fullback. If I ask Audrey, who's a natural left footer, to play right back, she's going to cut into her right foot. Okay. If I ask Dante to play as a striker, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. He might drop deep, pick the ball up and run at people. He might like it up there and shield and stick his arms out. Okay. If I ask Stephanie Vonya to play at centre back, I'm not sure what would happen just yet. Okay. So again, some of you are more flexible than others. That's fine. You don't need to know 10 positions by the time you're a senior player, but it's good to have an understanding of each of the lines. When you're in the defensive line, what's your role? When you're in the midfield line, what's your role? And when you're in the forward line, what's your role? Okay. Again, Give yourself a score out of 10. Nearly there. Mental. Can you handle the pressure of your parents, of your coach, of the game, of the league table, of the scenario? Must score 3 goals to win the league. Do you have the confidence to deal with it consistently? Do you have the composure to remain calm, even under pressure? Do you have the mental toughness to recover from a setback? We're 2-0 down in the first minute. I'm going to start blasting my teammates, or I'm going to internally control what I can control, and I'm going to start lifting my game and start motivating people. Okay, where do you think you're at your level? I'm going to keep stressing that because I don't want you to get confused. Give yourself a score out of 10. Emotional. Now, do you have emotional control? So are you silly and you start jumping in because someone swore about your mum and you go and do a 2-foot tackle and get a yellow or a red card because of the pressure or because you're upset? Or do you make a silly foul because you're not in control of your emotions because you made a mistake a minute ago? A really common thing that players do when they're inexperienced is I've turned the ball over. Oh, I'm going to go and foul that person straight away so they don't score a goal. Sometimes you just need to delay them and wait for other people to help you out. But that's part of your emotions. Okay? Can you ride the roller coaster that happened in a game and keep your focus? So we're 2-0 up in the first minute. Do I then become really lazy and casual and start knocking balls around like I'm Maradona in the park, and then all of a sudden I get caught out of position because I'm too casual? Or do I realize that this 2-0 lead that we've got may not last the whole game if it's happened early on? Okay? Same goes if you're 2-0 down after 5 minutes. Do you then start thinking short-term goal is, can we get a goal back, make it 2-1, put a bit of pressure on the opponent? This is all the emotional side of a game. And the last one in that slide is be composed when the score affects your mood. So am I still composed and calm when I'm losing 3-0? Or am I composed and calm when I'm a goalkeeper and I've basically scored an own goal, kicked it into my defender and it's gone back behind me? Or I've missed a penalty. I'm a striker. I've missed a penalty. What happens after that? Do I fall to pieces? The next chance I get, I kill a koala in the tree or I bury it in the top corner. Okay? Again, for your age group, for your level, give yourself a score out of 10. Lucky last. Lifestyle. I'm going to weigh you all when we get back. Jokes. Okay. Are you eating well? Are you putting in the right kind of nutrients into your body at the right time? Or are you staying up late like I was last night and eating a packet of pods? Okay? Not every night, but last night I did. I just felt like a sugar hit. Not a good idea because I didn't sleep well. All right? Did you drink enough water? Did you recover and get the rehydration into your muscles so that you don't cramp up when you're sleeping? So the next day when you wake up in the morning, you can go and do a bit of exercise. Do you sleep well? Do you sleep enough? I heard a brilliant quote by Johan Cruyff, again, one that's not easy to find. It was actually by his son-in-law. And he said, Johan used to always go to bed and try and make sure he'd go before 10 o'clock. And he used to ask him why. And he used to say, every hour before midnight is worth double. I don't know what that means, but I presume, he wasn't sure either, but I presume it means if you do go to bed before that time, you're more likely to stay asleep for longer because you've got a routine, and therefore it's going to be worth more to you. That's how I interpret it, but you could interpret it in another way. And this is the last one. Do you do the extra work to prepare yourself away from your club or from our school program? And there are students that do it that I know about, and there's probably students that do it that I don't know about. Each person's different. Some people want to, share things with me, and some people don't. That's okay. I'm fine. I don't get offended. Okay? So, again, based on people of your age. This one might be a little bit harder to compare yourself to if you don't know what your friends do in terms of their food and water and sleep. But you'll probably know who does the extra work in your team. I had a great story from one of our older boys. He was trying to find somebody to train with over the weekend. And none of his mates were available, yet this is his club mates, yet they're all playing at a high level, supposedly high level in Victoria with him, and no one wanted to train extra. And the conversation went something along the lines of, that's pretty sad. And it was. Okay? And that's at under 20s level. So one step away from senior football. When if you really do care about this as your potential professional part of your journey to play senior soccer somewhere, then all of these things have to add up, and lifestyle's a big one. And again, if I go back to these three, These are the ones you can change and work on. We are working on our mental. We're definitely working on that, and we've been doing that for a while. Emotional's a little bit different because you all have a temperament, but I think if you work on the mental, you can deal with the emotions better. And I think most of you that are doing this will find that when you start playing again, things won't affect you as much. Lifestyle, I've tried to show you with how to cook some nutritional meals, and you've heard this all before. You can Google this 1,000 times. The tough thing is to stick to it, and this brings me to my last point. If you've managed to do those push-ups and the sit-ups and the plank, which was the original 3 things, 10, 20, 30 second, if you notice the correlation between the numbers, you're now up to tomorrow will be, well, today's 30, I think, 30 push-ups. If you've done it every single day, or if you've had, 1 or 2 odd days where you've forgotten, or you've had Ramadan or something was happening, that's fine. So if you've done that over a long period of time, you've done it for 33 days, close enough too. They say a habit is formed after 66 days. So imagine you started to eat well, drink enough water, sleep well, and do the extra work, and you set yourself a target 66 days. Every day you cross the little X off your little calendar, whatever you use digitally or not. Maybe if you did this today, this whole assessment and evaluation today, when you came back to do it in 66 days, it'd be a different picture and you'd be a different player. I'll put my house on it that you'll be a better player. Okay? So now your challenge is to go away, to have a go at this. Send it to me when you're ready. No rush, no urgency. In terms of when we're back, we should be back at school on Tuesday for everybody. Tomorrow we're back with the 12s and 11s, back to normal. It's all clean after this overblown COVID thing. And yeah, if you have any questions now, I think that was the last line. Already done. Oh, soldiers and artists. That's one for next week. So I'm already preparing next week's presentation, and we're talking about every team having soldiers and artists. And I'm actually going to get a recording of Stephen Lushtitzer, because him and I had a chat about this the other day, and it's a really good thing. So I'm going to get him to give his opinion. So I'll give you a video of him talking about the difference between soldiers in the team, which he's one of, and artists, which Alessandro Diamanti is in their team. So that's for Western United fans. If you know what I'm talking about in that, you can watch some highlights of them and see what their roles are in their team. And he goes, it's really important for young kids to understand that not everyone's going to be the Messi of their team. Sometimes you have to fill a role and do a role, because most of soccer is role players, soldiers, and there's a couple of artists per team. And the best artists play, and the ones that aren't very good artists but can't be a soldier, they never play. So it's going to be a good presentation, this one. Okay, so there'll be more on that, and plus the next part of Soccer Hacks, part 5. So, any questions? Let me stop screen share. Hi, Sasha. You know your camera's on, yeah?
Hello.
There you go.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So, guys, any questions? No. So again, I'll quickly share to show you where it is. I'll exit this. Again, if someone forgets and they've actually edited the original, that's fine. I'll repost it. I'll put it on Edmodo as well, because you can't edit anything on Edmodo. So here it is, my talent profile just up here. When you click it, don't open it in here. Go to these top 3 dots and download a copy for yourself. Once you've downloaded it, you can then edit it on your desktop as normal. And then when you send it to me, it won't affect anyone else's. It's important that you put your name, obviously, for obvious reasons, but it's also important that you put the date, so that when you go and do another one of these later on in the year, or whenever you choose to do another one, you're able to look back at how many weeks, days, months have passed between it, how much have I changed my rating. And again, I'm going to stress this one last time. Please focus on where you're at your current level, not where you want to be. That's a goal-setting thing. This is a current talent profile where you see yourself at. And again, be sweet. So this presentation will be, again, a little bit different to the previous ones, because it will look at a little bit more of the whole game rather than individual things. There are a couple of individual things that I'll look at, but I'll generally be using a little bit of match analysis to give you an understanding of perhaps something that you haven't had a chance to look at your clubs before, which is understanding that the whole game is actually a lot of small mini games that are happening and moving around the pitch constantly. Okay, so bear with me, and you should be able to get something pretty useful out of today's lesson. And then I'm going to give you some homework, optional homework, just a match for you to watch online with a different camera view to what you're used to. It's called tactical cam, and it's above head, similar to what we do with our drone. So I'll let you have a look at that at the end of today's seminar, and you can give me some feedback on how different the game looks when you look at it from above head as opposed to when you're in the game yourself playing it or watching a highlights package. Okay, so the first question is, when you play a game, do you know your opponent's dominant foot? And this could be your own game at school. It could be a club game against an opponent. It could be a training practice game where you've got different opponents and you have an opportunity to either make them play with their left foot or their right foot based upon which foot they use the most. The reason this is important is because if you can think back to how many people you've played against that are actually two-footed, properly two-footed, that the number would probably be quite small, which is realistic because to be two-footed at your age would require thousands of hours of ball mastery on both sides. What you'll find as you get to the senior level, as you guys start to progress towards senior ranks, is if players have been playing for a longer period of time and they've actually had some correctional coaching on their technique and they've gone and repeated and practiced, they may well be competent on both feet. But you'll always know which person's more comfortable with one foot or the other based on the first couple of minutes of the game. So if you don't know somebody's strong foot, dominant foot, more comfortable foot, use the first 2 to 5 minutes of a game to analyze the game without worrying too much about what's happening. Obviously, you do your job. You don't, stand there staring at people. But while you're moving around in your formation, depending on where you're playing on the field, use that time to start looking at which foot your opponent generally likes to receive the ball and which way they like to turn with the ball. This could help you guys so much in terms of neutralizing their dominance. And there's a really good opportunity for you to do this even in the warm-up. So when you notice teams warming up, if you share the same pitch or the same area to warm up and they do some sort of a passing activity or a possession game, try and ask your coach, it could be me, it could be your club coach, to do your stretches when you see them doing the possession. And then while they're doing the possession, just go and have a look at them. And you look at them just to see your opponent or players around your area and to see which foot they want to receive and turn with, so that you can straight away send them to the opposite foot when you're marking them tightly or when you've got a 1v1 with them in the game. And you can start to use your brain a little bit to help you, I guess, get the upper hand on your opponent. Now, what I mean by this point is take their dominant foot out of the game. So if I'm a right footer and I like to turn with my right foot to the inside of my body to set up a right foot pass, maybe when you go to mark somebody, you mark them slightly more on their right-hand side to give them a little bit less time on their right foot and maybe encourage them to use their left foot, which might be a little bit slower, might be a little bit weaker. The touch might be a little bit more heavy. And in that case, it might give you an opportunity to step in there and steal the ball. Okay? This is just it's something that I use from kickoff when I play in defence. I look at usually my strike. If I'm playing defence and the other team's got the kickoff, usually one of the strikers and a winger or a striker and a midfielder, or sometimes just the striker, will take the kickoff. If they're doing that, I'll look straight away to see which foot he took the kickoff with. From that, I've got a very good understanding of which foot he's most likely to use. Sometimes I've been tricked in the past. Sometimes I've used it when I've played up front, where I've taken kickoff in my first couple of touches with my left foot when I've played against someone that I'm pretty sure I haven't played against. And then I use that against them. So I'll take my first couple of touches with my left. This is, again, because I'm a little bit older and I've managed to practice my left pretty well in comparison to my right. I'm comfortable at passing and controlling with my left equal to my right. So I've got the advantage of doing that, but I'd still rather shoot with my right foot because it's just better. It's a better foot. It's got a bit more curve, a bit more power, a bit more accuracy. So when I was playing up front, I would use that as a trick from early on to maybe try and confuse my opponent. And sometimes early on in the game, when they haven't had a chance to work out which foot you use or they just haven't paid attention to begin with, you have a really quick opportunity to get an early goal. And sometimes, soccer's a very low-scoring sport. Sometimes one goal is enough to win you the game. Okay? So that's just something for you to think about. While you're doing that, you can also see what their weak foot can and can't do. So if you force them onto their left foot, for example, and they're a right footer, and you see that their left foot passes are a bit more bobbly or a bit more bouncy or a little bit inaccurate, then the rest of your teammates, you can tell them without letting your opponent know. You can maybe tell them, hey, maybe go and press that pass from them earlier. So let's say I'm the striker, I'm that weak-footed left foot, I'm receiving it on my left foot because you've taken away my right foot. And my first pass back to my midfield, just that little bit short, little bit sloppy. If you tell your midfielders about this and say, when I force him or her back on their left foot, maybe you guys step on them on their first touch because the pass might be slow and you might be able to cut it out. So these are little things, okay? But this is a very important communication tool for you to use, and it will never change. So a lot of things in the game change. It gets faster and the spaces get tighter, as you'll see with some of the analysis stuff we've got later on. But one thing that hasn't changed is you still need to use both feet in the game. And if you can make your opponent use one foot rather than the other foot, and you know that that foot's a little bit weaker, then you can get a very quick edge on your opponent, especially in junior soccer, okay? So hopefully you understand that one. If you've got any questions, just flick on your mic and ask away. And then the next slide I wanted to talk to you about is one that sometimes maybe I've mentioned to you during training, and Mr. Cataforis definitely would have mentioned it to you during training, is what determines the next move in a game. So in a game of football, there's the person that has possession of the ball. Yeah, we know that person, okay? Generally, if I have the ball, I'm going to make the decision on what you're going to do next if I'm passing to you. Now, what I mean by that is the type of pass that I give you will either lead you to do A, B, C, or D. One of several things. I'll give you an example. So if I want a 1-2 with you and you're, let's say if we're looking at this image here, I'm this person with the ball and I play you a shorter pass that comes to here, well, obviously you're going to have to come short for the ball, in which case your defender may come with you. So if this happens, you come short, you're likely to bounce it back to me, playing the 1-2. Now, if I'm smart, I may move slightly here or slightly there to lose my own opponent that might have just been behind me here. And because I've played the ball short to you, I've determined your next move. If I played your short ball here, you can't exactly turn and face your goal because the pass didn't allow you to do it. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense in terms of me, the person with the ball, this person down the bottom here, the ball carrier, okay? I actually determine what you're going to do with the ball a lot of the time based on my pass, okay? If I want you to receive the ball to take on the defender, then I may play a pass into here, okay? Or I may play it really sharp into your back foot so that you can swerve in towards goal if you're a right footer here. Or I may play the ball on the outside here because you're a left footer, knowing that you can turn and run towards the wing and then hopefully cut in and do something from there, okay? So when I play that kind of pass with a lot more speed on it, then you know it's not for a 1-2. Otherwise, I would have taken some of the speed off it and made you come short. The reason I might make you come short here is because I want to drag your defender out of space. So that 1-2 could actually provide a running option for this person. So you come to the ball, I've got the ball, your defender comes with you and leaves a little hole of space here, which this person can get into, okay? I know this is a lot of arrows and things moving around for you now, but you've just got to visualize it a bit. And again, I'll show you some videos to help you with this in a minute, okay? If you want if you want your receiver, if I want this person to actually outpace their defender, I may play it to their back foot or straight into their path here when the defender's tight on them. So as I'm bringing the ball up, this is why it's so important for you guys to raise your heads when you're looking, when you've got possession of the ball, when you're dribbling, rather than have your head down, because whilst my head's raised, I can see these little movements of my striker and the defender, and then I can decide what I'm going to make you do with the next pass that I give you, if that makes sense. Okay. Now, this picture here is something we've got in our curriculum, which is the 3 types of passes that you can have in a game. And I believe I covered this early on in Soccer Hacks, if not in one of our other seminars. But just as a recap, the 3 main types of passes you can do is the vertical pass, which is a straight pass. Okay. The horizontal pass, which is the one that you play across people, the backwards one, sideways one, sorry. This would be more your backwards, forwards, sideways, sideways. And then the one that's probably the hardest to play but the most dangerous to put on opponents is the diagonal pass, okay? And if you look at this little chart here, there's rules of what can and can't be done with each pass. So, for example, a vertical pass that's played from here to here, or in this case from there to there, you can't take your first touch to face forwards because the pass is coming straight at you, so it doesn't allow you, if that makes sense. All right, so you can have a look at this yourself. I'm happy to scan this. It's like I said, it's in our curriculum document. You can read it from there. Okay, and again, that's one of those things that has not changed in soccer for 100+ years. Okay, any questions on this one? No. Okay, this is the part of the presentation that I think you'll find the most value from. So the other day we started working a little bit on defensive movements with our 7s, 8s, and 9s, and how to set ourselves up into the pressure player, the cover player, and the balance player. And I think if you had a quick look on Teams, there's a video of our Year 7 girls doing a really good example of this during their training session the other day, which we filmed with the drone. So you can go back and have a look at that after this. But effectively, if you look at the game from a bird's eye view, now this is assuming that they're magnets on a board when you start the game, perhaps from kickoff or when the game's in normal neutral territory, so the ball's in the middle of the park and everyone's sort of got their opponent or their area of the field. If you put a little box around everybody or every area where the ball is, you'll come up with some sort of a 2v2, 3v3, 4v2, whatever it is, depending on where the ball goes. You'll come up with some sort of a mini game within the big game. And what I mean by that is, if you have a look at this red box, this, by the way, is taken from the Curver coaching methodology. They call it the box trap. So the trap is where you get someone into a little area where you have the extra player and you can try and press the ball and win it. And the box is where you try and make it bigger so that you can have an extra player in here. So, for example, in this situation, we're going to look at the blue team. We're always going to look at the blue team when I'm going through these dots. So the blue team is defending the red team here because the red 8 has the ball, okay? And at the moment, they have a decent triangle, but the 10's kind of a bit out of position here to put pressure on there. So they can, if this 8's already beaten the 10 and they're starting to progress past the midfield line into the attacking part of midfield, then we may need somebody else from around here, one of these other blues, to come in and give us that extra player inside here, inside this box. Because at the moment, 3v3 is something that would be better for the attacking team as opposed to the defensive team. Because remember we said, and again, I'll repeat it for those that, the older ones that aren't doing the junior sessions, in every situation on the field, you want to get +1 somewhere. And what that means is you're trying to, if you're the blue team, you're trying to get one extra player so that you've got somebody spare that can perhaps go and intercept the ball or help the person that needs it. Okay, if it's all 1v1 everywhere around the field, then obviously the most skillful players will be able to hurt you. If you've watched any elite games, top games, you'll notice that players like Messi, Ronaldo, the ones that can dribble and take on people, won't just have one opponent. They'll have their main opponent and they'll have somebody that's coming around there to help out because they know they're dangerous. There's no point having a second opponent if you're the red team, okay, oh sorry, you're the blue team, on the number 5 or the number 4, because they're far away from goal and they're a central defender. You'd think a central defender would not have the dribbling capacity of Messi or Ronaldo. Otherwise, they might be playing higher up in the attacking part of the field. Because as you know, attacking is very hard in soccer. It's a very low scoring game. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little bit of a video which will hopefully help you understand it a bit. This is an example of, we're looking at the whites specifically in the first part of the video, and then when I play it back the second time, we'll look at the reds. If we do a quick count of players, so this is from the World Cup 2018, the ball's in possession up here. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the entire, I think it's Spain, the entire Spanish team in their attacking half. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The entire England team, I believe it is, in their defensive half. Okay, and this is probably a good example for you guys to understand why we don't try to play big field games with you so much. Only on the odd occasion where we just want you to have a run out and open your legs up. But essentially, the top level game, and the more you analyse it, is played in sections of the ground where everything's super tight like this. So when we play small-sided games or half-pitch games and it's 11v11, try not to complain about it. It's actually going to make you a much more effective player if you ever get to a higher level. And even if you don't get to a higher level, you'll have the foot skills, hopefully, to deal with this kind of defending whenever you play a stronger opponent that's very well organised. So have a look at this video. I won't talk through the first part of it. And again, just focus on the whites for now. Again, try not to ignore the ball, just focus on the whites. Okay, so that's the end of the video. So I'm just going to play it again and I'll stop it in a few key moments. So the first one I'll stop, oops, went too far back and now went too far forward. One sec, guys. I'll stop it in this one here. So don't worry so much about the figures here. What I'd like you to have a look at here is, can you see that it is effectively a smaller game being played in this area of the field? Because none of these players are involved at the moment, neither are these players. They're in an area, but they're not involved. The game at the moment is a 1, 2, 3, 3v4 in this area of the field. Just watch it shift across. Okay. Now it changes because now this guy's technically not involved because this player in possession is now facing this way. So the game is going to move across to the field. Have another look at it. There's the switch. And whoops. Sorry, guys. My mouse is a little bit sensitive. And there it is. Okay. So now, at this point in time, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4. Not really in the play because his body's facing that way. It's a 4v, and there's an extra Spanish player in here. So 5v4. Now, if they're quick enough and this England team doesn't move across enough, they've actually got a spare player. But let's watch it play through. Don't worry about that for now. I'll explain the depth and the width later on. Because I'll go back to the team out of possession and let this come to there. And now, because this, so watch the whites will shuffle across quickly and they'll make sure that because there's no attacking player in this space occupying here and they've got cover, the ball's not going to get out to there in this play. It'll get recycled back around. So now you're looking at the attacking team and how they've spread this little bit of space, but really it's still going to be a couple of people involved in the game and a couple of people that are not involved in terms of touching the ball. Okay, so you watch it again. Can't go through here, so they're going to recycle it. Recycle means they just return the ball back to a central position and they go the other way. And even in possession, the team is quite compact. This is an interesting one for you guys to understand when we try and encourage your defenders to get into midfield. Like this is where the two central defenders are positioned at the moment. Okay, 54 metres from the attacking goal, not behind this line where generally junior players like to play. Now, I understand higher level, less turnovers technically based on the skill and that, and you're probably fitter and bigger and faster at that level, at senior level, that you can run back and cover. But you should still try and practice playing like professionals do, because eventually that's how you're going to have to play to make it to that level. If you keep playing like a junior, then you're just going to be a junior player, okay? So here we go. That's the length of the whole team. So it's 29 metres that these players are covering, and their width is 51 metres. If you remember before, the width of the defending team was 39 metres. Watch the whites move across. Now at the moment, they've got almost going to be a 1v1 here, but this player's going to work hard, and watch these three now as they try and stop this from being at the moment, a 3v2, okay, or a 1v1. So if you drew a little box just around here, like in that diagram you saw before, at the moment it's a 3v2. But because the game's so dynamic and people are going to move, these players are already into a position where they're going to make sure that they're not going to be outnumbered. So now your box could be drawn around here and the whites have that extra two players in there, okay? So hopefully that gives you just a little bit of an understanding when I go back to this, how the game is not one massive game. It's a lot of mini games happening depending on where the ball is. And then obviously the quicker you move the ball around, hopefully your opponent gets either tired or somebody doesn't do their job or they get confused about who's marking who. And this is where movement off the ball comes and forward runs and all those little intricate details that we've tried to cover with you and we're going to continue to cover with you. That's where that becomes effective. Okay, so here's another example. I'm going to show you an action that ends up as a goal. So at this moment, again, we're still focused on blue because we're the blue team here. We've got a nice 2v1 with a centre back and a left full back against one winger. Now, if this 6 moves into that space, it's a 3v1. Or if the 6 moves into there, it's a 3v1. If this 9 does his or her job and comes into here really quickly, or the 10 does that, then all of a sudden this becomes a larger box of a 3v3. Okay? So you see that these shapes are constantly moving. And it's never going to be fixed in this position unless you take screenshots of the ball at someone's feet, then everything's fixed in that position. But within 2 or 3 seconds, everything moves. So let's have a look at this goal. This is Germany versus Mexico, 2018 World Cup. Germany, obviously, the reigning champions, winning the 2014 one. And this we'll see the goal from a couple of angles, and you can see how important it is in terms of movement off the ball and how quickly you need to break to create a chance. So let's watch it.
Nicely done again. Here goes Hernandez, taking on Boateng. He's got support here from Lozano. Cuts it back inside. It's Lozano! It's 1-0 Mexico! And the man who
Quite a well-taken goal, well struck. Now, this is the same goal, same thing, different camera view, so much more information. This is the goal scorer here. He's come from up there where you can see his path line of running. And again, this is a thing that juniors versus seniors in comparison. I'm going to stop it in a few moments here to show you. Now, the entire Mexico team, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, are all, bar this guy who's a metre or 2 metres off the halfway line, are all in their own defensive half. The German player is going to take a poor touch and it's going to be an excellent tackle. From that, in 2 to 3 passes, this player is going to end up scoring the goal. Yet he's doing a defensive job here. So this again comes to that point where I say to you guys, when we work on defending, if you think you're an attacker and you don't know how to defend, I can categorically tell you that you're not going to play at a high level. 100%. No chance you will play at a high level if you don't know how to defend. If you think you're going to sit up front and score goals and not actually do a defensive job, the higher you get, the more the fullbacks come and attack, the more the centre-backs join into midfield, the more teams rotate. And if they do that well and you're not doing your defensive job as a winger or an attacker, a striker or a number 10, a cam as you guys would put it, you will get absolutely slaughtered. In fact, you won't even get a look in at the highest level. So when we work on defending, you absolutely need to know how to defend. Every single player needs to know how to defend. Okay? And then on the flip side, every single player needs to have the capacity by the time you finish with us to understand how you're going to attack and how you're going to break. Again, if we get we may well get this soccer club team up next year. This would be things that we'd work on religiously so you can understand it and so you can get good at it. So that whenever you go to a higher level at a club, when you say I'm a striker and a winger and you just stand on the halfway line while other people are playing around you, ain't going to happen. You need to know your role. So let's have a look at the goal in slow motion. So track the running path of this. Also look at the layoff first time. Even though he could have turned maybe there, he lays it off first time because of his awareness. Brilliant layoff. Little 1-2 in here. So that's the 1-2 there. Drags the player. This guy's just bolted. His player's standing there, scratching himself. Counter-attack, nice pass, onside, cuts across. This is where your 1v1 individual skill comes into it. And a neat finish. So let's watch it again from the start. Again, when you watch it from here, it's hard to see those elements of the game. But that's the goal scorer there, Lozano. Okay? That's where he is. He's tracking. He's ready for this pass to be played there. He's probably out of position, to be fair, a little bit. But his teammates won the tackle. So he goes from defensive mode to instant attacking mode. Have a look. Off he goes. He's tracking.
Nicely done again. Here goes Hernandez, taking on Boateng. He's got support here from Lozano. Cuts it back inside. It's Lozano! It's 1-0 Mexico!
And that decides the game.
And the man who shone through the qualifiers has lit up the opening game in Group F.
So watch it again in real time from above. And that's another thing that we always say to our strikers, and I can talk about this, the boys that played in Spain, when we won the ball in areas where we could actually use them and break, they were often ball watching and just standing there, not aware of their space and not able to provide us an option. And they'd usually just stand next to the defender. Okay, so it's something we need to work on. This is called reverse engineering, guys. When you see problems, you see them in the big game and then you try and fix them in small details so that when they come to the big game, they can solve the problems a little bit easier, okay? And similar, I know in that situation, it takes a few extra touches, similar to that finishing activity that we do with the mannequins on Wednesdays in the technical sessions, albeit they've got defenders, so obviously they can take more touches, but you'll see some of the other goals in this video today are done quite quickly with minimal touches, just to release the opponent, okay? Any questions on this one? No? Okay, so here's an example of what you'd love to have. You'd love to have in a game your 10 or an attacking midfielder, whatever you want to call them, in a position where they've beaten their opponent either through a pass or by dribbling, and now you've got a 3v2 in here. Really, it's a 3v1 because the 6 is out of play now, and the 8's going to have to really put in a big chase there, but I would argue that this 10's got a clear path on goal, and the 9 could probably make one of two runs. He could run this way and give the 10 space to dribble and shoot, or they could make a little arc run in there and the 10 slips them in, and that's a 1v1. Now, will that happen in a game? You'd be surprised. It doesn't look like it would. You'd think to yourself, no, this couldn't happen at the top level, but you'd be very surprised. So again, looking at the game, all of these players at the moment are not involved in the game. This is what a junior game and a KDC game, a school game, looks like a lot of the time. And I can tell you this because I film a lot of the games with the drone. We are getting there, like especially with the senior girls, of understanding that we need to bring this line of play higher. What that means is when our 10 has the ball going this way, all of our back four of these red players would have to be here on the halfway line, ready to play if we need to come back out, okay? And that it does require fitness. It requires an understanding of the game and confidence in your teammate that they're not going to lose the ball. So let's have a look at this goal. So this is another example of a counter-attack. You'll see the two views again. Now this game's the one you're going to analyze as a bit of homework. It's it's Belgium, Japan from the 2018 World Cup. And it's a fantastic game for analysis and also in terms of the excitement and quality of the game.
It's missed by Vertonghen. It's a great chance for Haraguchi. He scores! The 2018 FIFA World Cup Finals continue to surprise.
So here's the same goal, same situation. He's tried to play the 1-2. Look where the goal scorer comes from. Not standing on the halfway line waiting for the ball where his defender's standing next to him, but he's actually come from that deep. Okay. Again, watch from here, and I'll hold it there. So at this moment, if you want to draw another box around these players, it's a 3v2 in favour of Japan. And in this situation, this striker winger takes not the best touch in the world. Doesn't really have many other options, to be fair, because Japan's set up well defensively. Okay, and this is the next phase of it. It's an interception by which defender would that be? Wasn't the pressing defender. It was the cover or the balance defender that actually wins the ball. The pressing defender just put a little bit of pressure. So I'll go back a little bit just so you can see that, because it's important to have pictures with all the words that we tell you. The pressing defender is just making sure that this player can't turn. The cover player is there to pounce and put the pressure from the other side. So have a look. Reads the touch. First instinct is a pass, but he manages to turn out of the problem. And then he sees the counter-attack. Okay, and now I'll just go back a little bit more. You're starting to watch this player, where these players come from. So you'd say probably 10 metres out of their box. He then makes a run. He runs outside, because if he runs inside, the defender's easily covering him. Because he runs outside, the pass isn't able to slip through. Yeah, you'd argue the defender could have done a bit better there. But the point is, because the run was made on the level and outside the opponent, if we go back to that other technical detail, so have a look. There's two examples of level and outside. Watch where this player receives it, level and outside in relation to a midfielder. So watch. Whoops, went too far forward as usual with my mouse. Okay, so there's the level. We'll go skip back to that. That happens in here. Level and outside, and then watch this player get level and outside of their opponent. And again, because they didn't run direct through the channel where they would have ran into a 2v1, if I do this, the box is a 1v1 at the moment. That's what you want. If you can get 1v1s in the game at all times, you're going to have a greater chance of scoring goals. You're going to have to be able to beat someone 1v1 by the time you get to senior football, even if you're a central defender. Okay, you don't have to do the fanciest trick. You just need to see that when an attacker's not in a defensive position, when their hips are square, and run past them and hurt them that way. Okay, here we go again. Level and outside, gets on the outside of the defender. That actually doesn't take a touch, kind of like a step over on the ball. So if you look at it live from now,
it's missed by Vertonghen. It's a great chance for Haraguchi. He scores.
Watch it again in real time. It's a completely different goal when you watch it in this view.
It's missed by Vertonghen. It's a great chance for Haraguchi. He scores. The 2018 FIFA World Cup Finals continue to surprise.
And here it is again. I'll just play this version of it because it's in real speed. Watch also all the Japan defenders get out. By the time he scores, look where the defenders end up. Very close to the halfway line. Okay. In this context of the game, it was 0-0. Japan got the opening goal. Then Japan scored again and was 2-0 up. Belgium ends up winning the game. That's why you're going to watch this game as your analysis, because it's brilliant. Okay. Now, going straight into the end of this game. The game is now 2-2. We're nearly done with the presentation as well. The game is now 2-2. Belgium have scored the last two goals after being 2-0 down. And it is the 93rd minute.
Courtois safely grabbed. And there's just time for De Bruyne to lead this attack. Japan desperate to cover the spaces. They can't do so for the moment. Lukaku, and here's a winner! Oh, can you believe it? Nasser Chadli strokes Belgium into a quarter-final against Brazil.
So it's a corner. There's your time frame. 2-2, 93rd minute, over the 93rd minute. Japan have got the corner. This game's going to extra time because it was in the second round of the World Cup. So the next round was the quarterfinals. Here it goes. This is in a slightly faster mode. And then I'll slow it down in the next one. There's a couple of players that you should look at in this one to help you understand this a bit better. First one is De Bruyne ends up playing the pass. So I want you to try and find De Bruyne here because he's the one that receives the ball from Courtois. And let's see what his movements are like as soon as his keeper's caught the ball. Keep an eye on him. Okay, so he's set up for the short corner. If you go back a little bit more, he's there blocking the short corner. He realizes the player's not going to take the short corner. Why? Because he's seeing this guy back up and another player's coming there to stop it as well. So he gets back into his near post sort of area. And then here's the break. Okay. Now that's one of the best midfielders in the world. Doesn't pass to the obvious option to the striker. Plays it wide. This is exactly what your goals look like when you do them well on a Wednesday after school. And why we practice them. So watch it again. And why the movement of Lukaku is so important. He actually makes the space for that Chadli guy to score the goal. So watch Lukaku now. So you stop watching De Bruyne. Now watch Lukaku. Runs out, runs across, stays across, doesn't run back to the near post, holds his run, dummies the ball, tap-in teammate. Could have been greedy and went for it, but he realised that in there's a little head check, which you can see on the other view, but not so much in this view. And he's obviously got a call from Chadley telling him he's at the back post as well. This is the fancy Titanic slow motion version.
Once more, you open the door.
Heads up, top speed.
In my heart,
Now lift up.
my heart will go on and on.
First time cut back. Ball.
There's nothing I feel, and I know that my heart will go on. We'll stay forever this way. You are safe in my heart, and my heart will go on and
Here it is again. At full speed. And that's a beautiful counter-attack goal. Okay. So I'll set you your homework now, and then I'll give you one more slide to finish with. This link, I'll post it on Teams when we finish the conversation. This link will actually give you that match in this view. So that's a screenshot that I've taken from it. And obviously you don't have to watch the whole match because it'll take you, I think it goes for 100 odd minutes. But it'll be good for you to watch 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. You can skip to the goals. All the goals happen in the second half. So even if you just wanted to watch the second half, if you're more interested in the goals, but if you're interested in watching how the game moves and shifts, this is a really good video for you to watch. It's a really good game. If you type in FIFA World Cup Tactical Camera TV on YouTube, there's actually a whole stack of them. There's England, Croatia, there's Australia, Peru. You can watch a whole heap of games from this kind of view. It does have his little watermark here in the middle, but it's fine. It doesn't really affect you. Sometimes it freezes a little bit, but it's in decent quality, much clearer than what you see in the screenshot here. So that's a really good way for you to watch. It'd be great for you just to watch one game from that view, just so you can change the way you think about the game. And that's probably the biggest thing that you'll get from this one today, from this entire seminar. Okay. Now, the last thing I'll finish with was something that I started on last seminar when we did Soccer Hacks, but I'm only going to touch on it a little bit because I was unable to get the recording that I wanted to from Stephen to explain his role at Western United as opposed to Diamante's role at Western United. But in a team, in every team in the world, if you go through your favourite club that you love and you start to list, if you had to list in your team who are the soldiers, who are the artists, and who are the warriors, what defines them? So a soldier is usually fullbacks, centre-backs, defensive midfielders, potentially a striker that doesn't score that many goals but does all the chasing and the holding up the ball, that sort of thing. Maybe your 8 in the midfield, the second midfielder. If you've got 2 holding midfielders, then you might have 2 soldiers there. And your artists are those flair players. Now, you've seen Messi, you know Messi. I'll use Messi because everyone knows who Messi is. If Barcelona had 2 Messis on the field, would they be as successful as they've been with just one? Now, it's a hypothetical, and you could argue both ways. But I would say whenever Barcelona have had too many attacking players that didn't track back and didn't have enough soldiers, they haven't managed to win big games. They managed to beat the lower teams because sometimes Messi can do things on his own, provided his teammates do all the chasing for him. But when it comes to a bigger team, if you have two or three people that you have to carry because they're good on the ball, but they can't do their defensive load, and they're chasing and the harassing and all the other stuff that comes with playing the game now in the modern day, because players like Maradona didn't do that. They were attacking players. You give them the ball, they win you the match. Okay, but the game has changed. You are now effectively looking at hybrid players where players can play anywhere. And this is why, again, we'll go back to what we try and teach you in our program at school, you need to understand all roles on the field. You need to be able to be competent to go there on the field, because you need to be able to do the attacking and the defending to play and be successful. I haven't seen an Australian artist yet. I haven't seen one Australian player in the history of Australian football that has made it to the top level that was an unbelievable Messi-like player. There's been lots of players that, like your Vidukas and your Kewells, Cahills, Brescianos, very good top-level players, like class players, but if they didn't chase, harass, work, there wasn't a coach that was going to leave them on the field and just let them play make because they were that good. Those players effectively don't exist anymore. And even the artists have roles to fill in the team now, whereas opposed to those days in the 80s and the 90s even, sometimes you'd let the artist roam free and do what they wanted to because they could win you the game, and other people were prepared to do the soldier work and the warrior work. The warrior one is an interesting one because the warrior can be a combination of the two. But if you look, I'll use an example of someone perhaps at Melbourne Victory, because you're all familiar hopefully with Melbourne Victory. Someone like Lee Broxham wouldn't be the most technical player in the world. He's definitely a soldier. Is he there to tackle and harass? Does he get sent off from time to time? Yes, he does. He's a warrior. So he's basically, when he's on that field, you're going to have to earn every touch, every kick, every free chance you get. Everything that you get is going to be earned. He's not going to give you anything for free. Now, if we go back to mindset, you can learn to become a warrior. You have to be a soldier. And a few of you may become an artist. That's the reality of it. An artist has to be a real creative player. Okay? And you can cross between the three from time to time. But if you've got this one, the warrior spirit, and you basically give nothing away in the match, when we say nothing away, you don't give anything away in terms of your effort and your desire and your hunger for the entire game, then you've got a chance of becoming an effective soldier, even if you're never going to become an artist. And that's fine. My brother-in-law, he's a soldier. He plays at Western United. He does the running and the chasing and the harassing and the positional play that he has to do so that Diamante can get the ball in an attacking position and he can hurt the other teams because his left foot is like a magic wand. That's the reality of it. Okay, so if you go and next time you watch a game, or even if when you're playing your FIFA games and you go through your lineup, you don't have maybe FIFA's a bit different because it's not real. It's a fake game where if you have speed, you can dominate. But if you watch a real game, every team is made up of a combination of all of these. And usually the one that has more warriors and really effective soldiers, they can carry that one artist if they have to, or they learn to play a system that allows that artist to maybe have less defensive duties or less workload so that they can be fresh when they get the ball to hurt the opposition. So when we go back to that video of De Bruyne, he's a midfielder that does both sides of things, but he's the creative force of Manchester City and Belgium. So he's the one that they get onto the ball. And you watch him again here. Okay. He still does.
Courtois safely grabbed. And there's just time for De Bruyne to lead this attack. Japan desperate to cover the spaces. They can't do so for the moment. Lukaku, and here's a winner!
So that's just something for you again to think about in regards to where you fit in that. I would say we've got a fair few soldiers in the program. We've got a few warriors that you can just look at from time to time and say they're going to lift the rest of the team. And there are some sort of semi-artists that need to work a little bit more on their defensive side. But ideally, you want to be both because then you're more likely to play and get yourself a contract somewhere higher. All right, so that's the end of the presentation. Are there any questions or anything you want me to explain a little bit more in detail today? I'll just check on the side panel if anyone's posted anything. No? Yes, Alex, I'm good as well. Yeah, so guys, feel free. Again, I'll send the updated version of this presentation to you because obviously every time I add the videos, I know they don't come out that clean depending on your internet and other factors on your screen. But they're really good to watch. I will show you where you can find some of these types of clips. This is something that Dr. Ron Smith gave me a few weeks ago. He told me to go onto FIFA TV and type in analysis. So if I go here, go to FIFA TV, you end up with their own little page. And then from that, there's a little search section here. Type in analysis. There's counter-attack clips. That's a whole conference. Compact defending, which is I've sent you some of the links to that one. One of those ones was from there. Again, a really good example. I'll do more seminars based around defending, but maybe just have a quick look at this one, for example, in terms of how we defend, or how we should be defending, and how we actually defend at school level and here in Australia, all over the shop. People stay out wide on people. You don't need to be out there. You need to tuck in and create defensive blocks. That's the space that people cover. It's less running. If I stay out here and he stays out there, then I leave holes in between here, and then people have to run more to cover each other. But if you all work together as a unit, you identify that the ball's going to be shifted across, then you don't get hurt. Okay, and your strikers and your wingers are there defending. You count it. If you don't believe me, count how many players are involved in the defensive phase at a World Cup. Okay? So it will not change. You've got to be an athlete as well in this game. And that you don't get that from running up and down hills and around laps and gym circuits and stuff like that. You get that from playing games and from shuffling and moving in games. That's the only way you can get fit for that. But yeah, for those of you that like it, there's actual videos on playmakers. I'll show you a quick one on a fullback analysis. It's a really good website. Just subscribe to FIFA TV and then type in analysis. And if you're really into your learning, you'll get a lot out of this. Okay, so you can track players' movements, where they're coming from deep and how they end up scoring. It's a really, really good tool. Okay, and it's in HD as well, how it's recorded.